Coming up on Kentucky Outlook, we pay tribute to a life well lived as we remember the legendary coach Jimmy Feix, who passed away on Sunday, October 5th. The 83-year-old Feix devoted nearly half of his life giving back to this community, to the university he cherished, and to the game that he so loved. Among his many honors, Feix was inducted into the WKU Hall of Distinguished Alumni in 2003, and that's how we're going to kick off today's program as we look back. And then we'll come back into the studio for a remembrance of Coach Jimmy Feix with retired WKU Sports Information Director Paul Just, in addition to former teammate Butch Gilbert and longtime friend and colleague Bill Edwards. Join us as we remember Coach Jimmy Feix. Kentucky Outlook is next.
Jimmy Feix is a champion of firsts. No stranger to success, Western Kentucky University's winningest coach has worn many hats during his time on the Hill, from student athlete to administrator to coach to alumni director to a modern-day icon of the Western experience. The year was 1949 when James W. Feix left his home in Henderson, Kentucky, headed for the Hill. By 1952, the WKU quarterback had become the first Hilltopper ever honored as an All-American. That same year, he guided the team to the first OVC football championship and Western's first appearance in a bowl game, the Refrigerator Bowl in Evansville, Indiana. In 1953, the NFL's New York Giants came a-callin', but Feix's professional dreams were dashed when a preseason injury ended his football playing career. 4 years in the Air Force, and Feix found himself back at Western, this time as an assistant football coach. In 1968, he took over as head coach, a position he held through 1983.
When I took the job as head football coach, a lot of responsibilities came with that, and I guess my association with the football program I enjoyed as much or more than any of it that I did.
He was a very detail-oriented man. He is a very organized individual, and he's a people person. And I think he really cared about Western, and he cared about the players that played for Western. So I think all those combination of things made him the successful coach that he is.
I've always thought talent was key to success at anything. And I think in order for the student athlete to be successful, he needs to be in a program that can capitalize on his success, give him a chance to use his talents, because talent is the basis for success. Attitude, hard work, all those tremendous things are also important, but it all comes down to having some ability to accomplish. Now, I think athletics is erroneous in claiming that we develop a lot of things. I think we screen a lot and we eliminate a lot of people who don't have the attitude or the ability to accomplish. But it's very difficult for you to make the athlete. I think they come to you.
Feix led his team to 6 OVC championships and as national runners-up in NCAA Division II action in 1973 and 1975. Feix himself was named OVC Coach of the Year 3 times, a career that was marked by many notable moments.
Well, I've got to think about the missed field goal against Eastern on national television, ABC, and the Eastern defensive end roughed our kicker, and we got another shot at it, and we hit the field goal that time, and we win by 1 or 2. I forget the score, but we won by 1 or 2 points on national television, and that was a high point for us. Going to the national championships twice was a good experience for me and for the university.
Jimmy Feix retired from coaching in 1983. He spent 2 years in alumni affairs and served as athletic director until his retirement in 1991. He's a member of the WKU Athletic Hall of Fame, and his name graces the field at L.T. Smith Stadium, a true legacy to this team player.
I'm very proud to be known as a company man, that I love this university and that I was willing to do whatever needed to be done for its success.
Coach Jimmy Feix, who we lost this past Sunday, October 5th. And we are remembering Coach Feix today as we welcome to the studio Paul Just. Many of you know Paul as the former WKU Sports Information Director, now retired, still extremely active, probably more active now than you were before. In addition, we're joined by Bill Edwards, who is the Director of Athletic Training at WKU, the Associate Athletic Director as well. Thank you for being here. And longtime friend, colleague, you played against him in high school. You played against Jimmy Feix. Lawrence Butch Gilbert joins us as well. Butch, thanks for being with us. You know, we looked at that video. We know all about Jimmy Feix, the coach. I want to know a little something about Jimmy Feix, the man. Help me share something that someone who knew him as the coach might not know about him as the person.
Well, you know, Jimmy was a complete package. He was a coach, he was a teacher, he was a motivator. I quite often think if there was a person who personified the spirit that we talk about, the spirit makes the master at this institution, it'd be Jimmy Feix. His influence in my mind goes much farther than the football field. The people he worked with and the influence he had on many, many people's lives.
And will continue to, for
Yes.
sure. What about you, Bill?
I just think of him as a mentor, and just one thing that really sticks out in my mind. I've told several people this, he's certainly one of my heroes, but his married life was something for many people to look up to. His example of his love for his wife Frankie, and always including her in everything, it just sticks out in my mind.
The
as something
devotion,
he did. Yeah.
the devotion that it takes. And you met Coach Jimmy Feix, Butch, back. You played him in high school, huh? You went to Bowling Green High,
Right,
and he went to Henderson, Kentucky
Yeah.
High. Okay.
and they were a little better than we were that year. That was the old West Kentucky Conference, and they had fine football there. In fact, they had some great coaches, and we ended up with one of them, Turner Elrod, coming here. But Frank Camp was one of his coaches, but I go back to Mama Essie Feix. What a sweet lady she was, and how well she got them straightened out, and Miss Essie that kept everything in order.
So it came from his mama. She
That's
taught
right,
him that.
yeah.
Okay.
He lost his dad early, and she raised two good sons, and we got one of them here, and Paul had his total package.
The total package. We were just laughing at, you talk about Jimmy Feix's mom, Essie, how Jimmy was known for the hats that he wore. Often he would wear a houndstooth or a tweed hat. And you mentioned a remembrance that you have of going to a Tennessee game?
Played East Tennessee, and they just built an indoor football dome, and he was talking about that all week. He didn't know what he was going to do coaching indoors, because his mom had always told him not to wear his hat inside. So he was worried about that.
So did he or didn't he?
I believe he did.
He wore the hat.
I believe he did. I think the players told him he had to.
The icon,
Yep.
for sure. So let's talk a little bit about Jimmy Feix coming to Western. He was recruited here, and he was a really good athlete for the time. Yeah.
Oh, he was an excellent athlete, and he not only in football. I think he was a pretty good catcher, I believe, Butch.
Right.
On
Yeah.
the baseball field.
He
not
wasn't
here.
a very big guy
No,
physically.
No, not at all. Not at all. Big here.
Yeah.
Certainly big here, but and he also was a basketball player, and I've heard him brag several times about the wonderful defensive job he did on Cliff Hagan, who was an All-American at Kentucky, and before that an All-American high school player at Owensboro Senior, which played the Henderson-Owensboro rivalry was big, and that he shut him down one night, sorta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we know about him getting recruited to come to Western and how all that shook out?
Well, let me go back. Before Jack Clayton was assistant coach that year. Go back.
Yeah, that was
the first year, 46. Jess Thomas.
Jess Thomas. Yes, Jess Thomas
was here and started ball back after the 2 or 3 years that we didn't play football.
During World War II.
Jess Thomas
During
was,
the war.
and Jack Clayton was the assistant, and I think Jack recruited Jimmy, they were great buddies even down through the line, and it kind of going back, that was the day the T formation deal was coming in. Skip Powell was very important in it, and Jack Clayton had been involved with him a little bit, so we started the T deal with Jack, and Jimmy was pretty good, quick enough he could get out of the way and could throw it a little bit sidearm, but he could still throw it. Ended up that he got in. I forgot how far along in the season before he got to start one. He was right after Jim Pickens was chief on the hill, and Jimmy came in right after behind him and got his records and did so well with it and we had 2 or 3 good athletes at the time that made him look good.
Now, would you happen to have been one of those?
Oh, well, I played, that year I was on the other side of the ball. I played defense only then, and then the next year I had to play, or didn't have to, got to play both sides before all the platooning came in, and we were pretty close. I was the snapper and he was the quarterback, so we were very close.
No doubt. Let's talk about Jimmy Feix, the athlete. He, as we mentioned, he was a slight guy. He wasn't a very big guy, and yet, just an extremely good quarterback.
Well,
extremely
the
good
heart,
athlete.
though, Barb, and toughness of him, and I think it really showed in him. He was not, as you'd say, physically strong right now, strong enough to get by, and took some awful hits, but wasn't as big as some of them you see now, 6'4" and 5 quarterback, and 220, 230. He might have got to 170 or 175, but was pretty quick, accurate, and a tremendous heart, and smart as the old head worked pretty good for him. So that got us through lots of ball games. We won lots of ball games at the time.
And you talk about the wife, and Coach Harbaugh was in recently, and we were talking about just the importance of the team mentality in a marriage, in a family, how everybody has to buy in to make a coach successful. Jimmy had that, as you mentioned, with Frankie, his wife.
Oh yes, they were a close-knit family, and remain a close-knit family. But and Jimmy, one thing that was certainly one of the signatures of the way he operated. He's the most organized man
If there's ever been.
Really?
I mean,
Yeah.
he was on top of everything.
Okay.
He was on top of everything, and if the meeting started at 3 o'clock, if you weren't there at 5 till 3, you were late.
Okay.
And the bus left that schedule too, didn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
A
And,
lot of people miss the bus out there.
Yeah,
he
all
was.
the girlfriends got to drive him to meet us on our first stop time.
Because it was gone.
He had everything under control, and it was perhaps the most organized person I've ever been around.
Yeah.
He's exceptional.
Was that organization there when he was playing, when he was a player at Western as well?
No.
That came later?
No, that came separate.
Okay, that came separate. And what some people may not be aware of is the fact that, he had a chance to play in the big leagues. He was being recruited by the Giants.
He signed with the New York Giants, and Butch, you probably know this better than I, but he suffered a preseason injury and was advised not to continue. And I've been told by some that Giants had one of the top quarterbacks in pro football at the time by the name of Charlie Connerly, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people felt like Jimmy was going to be his top backup and maybe his successor, and it just didn't work out.
No, he took
Do you remember that time, how that was for him to
Oh yeah,
have
took a
suffered that?
shot, and I can't go into all the scientific terms or medical terms that happened to him, but had a hard time stopping the bleeding that came from. I don't know if they never said it was concussion or anything, but that was a problem, and they examined and all and said, don't think you need to take any more hits like that. And there he was, 175, and some of those guys were 230, 40 at that time. Now they're 300. But anyway, a hard hit got him,
And changed his life for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, and for Western, very good.
Yeah, and for Western,
Got
very good. So
back,
let's take it now to the Western. So here he is. He's not going to be able to go play in the NFL Now what?
Went to the Air Force. didn't he?
Service.
Air Force,
Next.
yeah.
Yep. And then came back.
Became a pilot. I believe it was pilot, wasn't he?
Yeah, at the time, Western had ROTC. There was an air one as well as ground forces, and several of that bunch that he came with was in the Air Corps part of it. And he was a pilot for a while, and I don't know all the places that camps and airfields that he was stationed at, but that's
then-
when he came back as a finish up and a grad assistant.
Yeah, exactly. So finished up as a grad assistant, and then Western decides this guy needs to stay here.
Yeah.
So take us through that.
Well, you know, Coach Dennis came in. Coach Clayton went back to Louisiana,
Yeah.
and Coach Dennis came in '57, which is the same point in time that Jimmy was coming out of his 4-year stint in the Air Force, and came back to school, wanted to be a graduate assistant, and obviously wanted to get into coaching. I know I've heard some of them tell stories about when he was home on leave from the Air Force, that at the times that if we were at home, he'd be in the press box
Yeah.
with, I guess at that time, one coach probably.
Yeah, well,
But nonetheless, just had to be-
but
Yeah.
sitting in on sitting in and helping out.
it was Coach Clayton and Coach Griffin and Turner.
Turner, yeah.
All right.
And then I saw somewhere where that I think he started coaching. Didn't he coach a basketball team in the military?
Yeah, one of the
One of the military stops
camps,
somewhere along the
yeah.
line. He coached a military basketball team. So I think he found out pretty soon that coaching was in his blood.
Yeah.
And why do you think he was such an effective coach? The winningest coach in WKU history. I mean, when you look at all the accolades, all the honors that he received along the way, you know a lot of coaches. Some get it, some don't. He got it. What was it that he had?
As I've hung it up and noticed other coaches, I decided he was a better coach than I've seen a whole lot of them, and he stayed on top of it. We visited other schools, what they were doing in the spring or fall. We went to some pro camps and things there. And of course, he was a great reader. Coach didn't have a hobby really that you'd think of. He did coach Little League baseball that I wanted to mention because he touched so many lives there as well. Somebody said, boy, he was my Little League baseball coach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
What an honor. Huh?
And of course, his children played, or Jimmy played, a very good catcher. And Coach was a staunch Cardinal fan, and that was just unique.
People may not be aware of that, right?
Oh, he had
Yeah.
a piped-in business to watch the Cardinals play.
He loved to watch those
That was
worth.
worth my family thinking about the Yankees. so,
But there was something about him, right? Because as having coached you, as training, just working with, there's that something.
I can tell you what my thought is, that he was always so positive,
yeah.
no matter what, and he made the players just wanted to play for him. He had that kind of personality, and he'd take up for them and protect them, and he was just always positive about everything he did.
Which is not always what we see, right, from coaches, right? To say they're positive, a lot of times it takes, the strong arm.
And I might add, humble as well. His ego never got in his way.
Speak to that humility.
He was such a class individual,
Yeah.
all the way around, and the combination of class and competitiveness made him a winner on the field, along with those other things. But that all fell together.
Competitiveness in what way?
But he didn't want to lose
Well,
by any means.
No.
He was like you talked about him, a student of the game.
Yeah.
And he knew how to coach. And he knew how to motivate players. And I think if you know how to play, and you know how to motivate them, you can go a long way. And he did that with a touch of class, and he passed that competitive edge along to his players, I think.
Did you ever see a side of him where he felt like maybe, because he was winning, and there comes a time when that can get to you, but apparently the humility kept him in that right place.
I don't think that ever happened to him.
Barb, he was conference coach of the year 2 or 3 times. He's got the trophy, but as soon as he got that honor, 5 assistants got one too the next day. Thank you guys, and hand us the trophy. He's just that kind of guy. He took the heat for anything bad, but he shared the good news with us to go.
It was all about the team.
Yeah. But one more hat story. Tennessee Tech finally beat us one day over here. And Bill Wade was the coach there. And Bill Wade tried to get his hat.
Oh, yeah.
And Jimmy told me the next day, he said, "Why'd that nut want my cap, my hat?" I said, "Well, that's the only time he's ever beaten us, and he might not do it again." So he's wanting a trophy.
You're looking for a souvenir, what?
No, yeah.
You know, Barb, besides him wearing that hat, you know, I don't know if you know or not, but at the end of the game, when the game was, the outcome was done, if we were winning, then he would throw his hat as high as he could throw it and land on the field, and somebody go chase it down for him and get it back to him.
He'd always get that hat back.
Yeah.
The game changed a lot during his tenure in the time that he
Oh,
was
yeah.
here. How did he adapt to those changes?
Well, he let us coach, and he kept us updated. I read this, or can we do this, or why can't we do it like this? And if we'd hash that around in a meeting, and when we left that office over there, then we were all in accord of how we were going to do it, and that was it. Of course, he's kind of like Coach Dennis. Coach Dennis would tell the assistants, says, "Each of y'all have a vote, but there's 5 of you, so I've got 5 votes." That's kind of the way Jimmy was. But we shared, and he didn't insist unless it worked out to our advantage some way, if we wanted to change something or add something to. And we had he was one to keep it simple, as that was the big thing that went around. And he called the offensive linemen God's children, so everything had to be safe for them to protect the backs. He liked to give Leo and the guys plenty of time to throw it. We're trying to send, "Coach, if we just send one receiver out, we've got all day to throw it, but they've got 5 down there that'll cover him pretty good." Had a hard time getting him to let us at the time call flare control, and so, but that got worked out too. And so
Well, it sounds like he was
well.
kind of innovative, like wanted to stay on top of his game and the game,
Yeah.
so that he would throw out new ideas.
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
we tried it.
Yeah.
Well, and we had some standards that we wanted to meet, and felt like that defense was number one with us, and had been for a long time. And he said, "If we can score 19 points, we can win." And most of the time we did.
There
And
you
just
go.
go back and look, and we had in Division II and 2A, we were always on top of defensive stats, which the W's mean something, but that was the way his feeling was, that we had some simple things. If we met, we won, because defense was going to shut them down.
Because he liked to keep it simple. You know, he had lots of honors. The Fellowship for Christian Athletes, he had honors there, a lot of coaching honors, Hall of Distinguished Alumni, Athletic Hall of Fame at Western. He was one of the inaugural inductees. That having been said, you all knew him well. You knew him in different ways. But I would be curious, in your opinion, what do you think what was his greatest honor, Coach Jimmy Feix?
Well, I kind of feel like Bill said a minute ago, that maybe his family was first in all of that.
Yeah.
And secondly, the university, and then third, his players and coaches. And he was a company man.
Yeah.
This institution's had few like him through the years. We've had a lot of good ones, but few like Jimmy Feix.
You concur, Bill?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I always wanted to emulate his life, that he wanted to stay here, and I always wanted to stay here too. So I teased him when he retired that I was hoping I could retire when he did, because I wanted to go out when he did. But
You're still here,
I'm still
right?
here.
Which is a good thing.
Barb, the only, I think, about any differences the staff ever had, it was over who got to ride in the middle of the back seat when he was driving. that
Is that
was
a good or a bad thing?
That was the safest spot
Safest-
to be with him.
He was a white knuckle driver.
Oh, he was.
Yes.
Yeah?
And I was thinking, boy, if he hadn't been such a good football coach, he'd been a great one in the NASCAR.
So he liked to drive fast?
He did.
He did, huh?
And did it very well.
And I guess I remember most when the talking back and forth the bus drivers with the headsets and all, he was Jiminy the Cricket. That was his handle.
Jiminy the Cricket was his
CB
handle.
radio.
And we'd up and down the road and talking to the truck drivers and all, telling you where a Smoky was, and he'd slow down a little bit.
Breaker 19, Jiminy the Cricket, yeah.
Oh, he had all the language.
I love it. I love it. You know, we talked about his influence, and you know, he will be missed, no doubt. But when you think about all the people that he has touched along the way, you are three, but there are thousands literally out there. And what some people may not realize is, you know, he spawned, that's not the right word, but as a result of his influence, he had 2 NFL coaches that came out of his.
Oh, let's
Two off of an early staff, and then
Yeah.
others later on who played for him as athletes, student athletes, a good number of those. But that first staff, Jerry Glanville, who's pretty well known and did a lot of work on ESPN and coached at Houston, now the Titans, and at Atlanta. And Joe Bugle, who was head coach at Arizona, and for a while at Oakland, and they were both long-time NFL coaches. But people like Darryl Drake, who was a receiver for him, that played a little with the Washington Redskins and has been coaching in the pros NFL for 7 or 10 years now, I guess, with Chicago and now at Arizona.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it this
And
way.
Romeo Crennel, of course.
Romeo,
Yes.
of course, Romeo Crennel. Well, I want to thank all of you for being here. It was a quick half hour, wasn't it? We've been sharing some remembrances of Coach Jimmy Feix, who we lost recently. And all of you, I know, will miss him in very different ways, but he will be missed. Butch Gilbert, Bill Edwards, Paul Just, thank you so much. That's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Kentucky Outlook. We're glad you joined us.